Actually, one more, just because I have to. Deshaun Watson was my number one quarterback in the draft.
I was going to say, how were you not talking about Watson? I was literally going to call you out for that, Elliot.
Yeah, Elliot, I call him the GOAT because Nick was
on
Deshaun Watson.
I was kind of hoping you wouldn't go there.
We have to talk about it because of his arm strength, and he had one of the lower percentile.
No, we're not going there. Otherwise, this podcast is going to go 4 hours of me just yelling about.
I love Deshaun Watson. He was my favorite quarterback coming out of college that year, so I'm with you all the way. But me and Nick, that whole summer, we're back and forth, and because he had such a great showing his rookie year, I call him the greatest of all time. So he's the GOAT. Welcome to the NFLMAX, the radio show inspired by the league, founded in 1998, bringing you 20-plus years of fantasy football experience. Broadcasting from our brains to your earbuds as we break down player profiles for your teams in Dynasty. You can check us out now on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Facebook, or you can watch the show on YouTube at youtube.com/NFLMAX for your weekly Max fix. And as always, Ewok Juggernaut here with the hot pineapples. We have a special guest tonight. Eliot Crist will be joining us in a few minutes. Before we get to Eliot, week 2 of the preseason is pretty much over. Monday night's game is happening tonight. But couple of news items here. Josh Gordon was reinstated on Saturday, and I was in the middle of a draft when the news broke. Missed out on him, of course. As soon as the news broke, he got drafted. But Josh Gordon's reinstated, and he's back with the Patriots. Here we go again. I've punched my ticket again for the roller coaster ride that is Josh Gordon, and of course, I'm excited. Everyone's excited who's a Josh Gordon fan. Let's see what happens this go around. So before we get to Eliot here, just wanted to remind you guys the official sponsor of the show, Monkey Knife Fight. And Monkey Knife Fight, the fastest growing DFS prop style game on the planet. And you can pick your favorite players. You could choose over and under on games and take some head-to-head action and rapid fire. Listeners of the show get 100% deposit up to $50 by using the promo code, which is NFLMAX, NFLMAX. And great for some DFS gaming. And they'll be up and running for week 1 of the regular season. I tried to do some preseason, but there was nothing going on there. But for DFS, I know, Nick, you play a lot. We're going to have Eliot on in a few minutes here, who works with the Quant Edge. And, that website is just phenomenal for DFS. So, yeah, check out Monkey Knife Fight and use the promo code NFLMAX. And we will be right back with Eliot Crist of the Quant Edge. And we just wanted to welcome to the show from the Quant Edge, Eliot Crist. He's our first-time guest on the NFLMAX program. And we just wanted to thank Eliot. Thanks for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so actually, even before we jump into my questions, Eliot, why don't you just take a minute? I know I subscribe to the Quant Edge. I'm part of, the team that you got rolling over there inside the chat and using the metrics, and even the betting tool is just fantastic. So why don't you just give us a minute, give us a rundown of the Quant Edge and kind of tell us what you guys are offering over there as a package.
Absolutely. So we cover, like you mentioned, betting, DFS. We do season-long stuff as well, though we're definitely focused around DFS and sports betting. Last year, we hit 60% of our NFL games across every single pick and 67% of our best bets. For DFS, we have optimizers, wide receiver cornerback matchups, injury tool, introducing a pace tool, dynamic rankings with rankings for both experts, including Matthew Hill, who finished number 1 overall last year in Fantasy Pros rankings, along with our projections, ownership projections. We're doing weekly matchups. We're doing 25 pieces of content. And like you mentioned, I think the premium membership chat is incredibly valuable. We're constantly interacting. Everyone's helping everyone get better. And, I'm really pumped about what we've built at thequantedge.com. We just launched our new website. iOS app should be coming out in a few weeks here. So, check it out at thequantedge.com. You can use promo code POWERHOUR to save money either off a season long or a month package. But you can also just check it out for free. Start your free week trial, get in on the DFS preseason goodness, and start rolling, getting ready for the NFL regular season.
Yeah, man, and I'll vouch for that because we had a good night last night inside the chat, and a lot of green screens popping up. And I know you mentioned the code Power Hour after you guys kind of acquired Power Hour Pod and those guys with Johnny and Hodge. It's the chat is amazing, and as someone who's sub there now for the Quant Edge, I followed you over to the Quant Edge last year, so this is my second year. Obviously, the site's only been running for 2, but I was over with you guys at Power Hour before that, and it's a dynamic product. And so, like Eliot was saying, get over there, try it for free, and at least just see what they have to offer. And the metrics alone are just fantastic, which kind of leads me into my first question. So, obviously you were mentioning you guys focus on DFS for the most part, but how do you use DFS to kind of inform your, as you know, this is a Dynasty podcast. So how do you use the DFS metrics and information and data that you gather to kind of inform your in-season management for your Dynasty leagues?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly helpful for streaming. It also allows me to be more accurate when evaluating my team on a weekly basis. I think one of the biggest struggles that fantasy players have is no one wants to be realistic about their team. The only thing I ever hear from every fantasy player is how great their team is. Well, unfortunately, if you play in a 12-team league, someone's going to come in first and someone's going to come in 12th. That's just kind of basic math. And you have to be able to evaluate where you are. You know what I mean? Am I a championship contender? Am I kind of a middle guy that's hoping for a couple right breaks? And this is obviously going into the season. Am I just going to sell and try to build off the assets I have and go into the draft and try to rebuild over the next 2 years? But once in-season hits, understanding if you are the favorite or underdog, I think really helps me make my decisions. I look at it almost as more of a cash versus GPP strategy. If the other team is way better than me, I'm going to play high ceiling guys. I'm going to play guys that might only get 3 or 4 targets, but have the opportunity. Like Kenny Stills is a great example, or Deshaun Jackson. These kind of guys are guys I'm going to play when I'm the underdog more than when I'm the favorite. And DFS has also shaped my teams where I'm willing to go a little bit more top heavy because I feel like I can use the streamability of my teams, kind of those 9th, 10th spots on your team, to kind of throw in high ceiling guys, mix high floor based on my matchups. And it's been pretty successful for me.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going to ask you too, like kind of just stemming off that. How many roster spots typically? And we're going to get, actually, I'll just jump right to the question now, because one of the things that I said is so much of the DFS lies in roster construction. So you kind of lent to it and hinted a little bit in your last answer, but your specific approach to your roster construction for Dynasty, how many of those churning spots do you typically leave in a year? Because I know with someone who gathers so much data, you probably have multiple options to stream in any given week, especially in shorter roster leagues.
I think I can interpret your question in multiple directions. I prefer like 27-man roster spot Dynasty leagues because I like that the waiver wire has somebody out there. Once you get to the 35, it's like, do you want to pick up I'm trying to think like Eric Tomlinson of the Jets to stream at tight end that week. And it's like, no, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Those are the leagues that I personally love because I like watching players develop and, deep diving and, someone else. I'm afraid of someone else sniping them from me off waivers. So I tend to play in those kind of leagues where there's deeper rosters,
And absolutely. And I think that's very reasonable, but it can limit streamability and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, which plays to your strength. That's kind of just, understanding yourself as a fantasy player and what format's going to best kind of fit you.
At the same time, with the amount of research I do, especially on the draft and everything, I'm very comfortable in a 35-man roster as well because I'm finding a bunch of hidden gems and guys I'm just storing on my team. I remember last year I was picking up guys like Kendrick Bourne. Now, did Bourne really do anything during the regular season? No, but he was a guy that people were picking up later in the season because he had some, late round opportunity for the 49ers. And I was picking them up in like July when no one cared about Kendrick Bourne. There is more advantage to have with your research in the offseason, the deeper and the shorter the rosters. I think it helps streamability and more week to week studying.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, just one final question based on roster construction. You mentioned that you like to go heavy up top, which I 100% agree with. I like to, my personal philosophy is go thin at wide receiver. I try to really, especially if I'm going to start up, hammer the wide receiver position early and go thin there and go volume at running back. Do you find yourself having a heavier volume at any one position, or do you find that your teams are a little more balanced?
I think I find my teams are a little more balanced, but I think it really depends on the league and how everyone is drafting around me. Because I'm a really big believer in you go in with a strategy, but you're willing to adjust. You know, you might go in late round QB, even super flex, and kind of be willing to start. And all of a sudden, everyone in the league's acting like it's not a super flex, and you can get Deshaun Watson in the 4th round. You're like, well, you know, it's time to change that strategy. I think sometimes people are hard headed, but I will say, whenever I rebuild a team, like if I take an orphan league and the team's not very good, I try to get young receivers and basically punt at running back with a bunch of volume, because running back turnover is so great year to year that I think that allows me that if I hit on those young receivers to have a much quicker rebuild, because you can get 3 or 4 rookie running backs that have real opportunity in year 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. So Russ and I were talking kind of pre-recording before you jumped on that our favorite tool between the both of us is definitely the wide receiver cornerback matchup tool that you guys have. It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, can you just real quick give us a synopsis of that tool and how it breaks down kind of against coverage and routes and whatnot?
Yeah, first off, I appreciate that, and we actually tried to add more to it this year. So we add the ability to, look at any week that you want to look at. So you can look at weeks 1 through 17. You can select a certain range, and then you can kind of see where they're lining up, how they're performing by different alignments, how they do by different route types. Like, maybe a receiver runs a ton of post routes, and that week the cornerback he's facing has just gotten lit up on post routes. It's taking the extra deep dive. You talked about the coverage. How does certain players do against man and zone coverage? How much zone coverage is the guy against him and that team going to play that week? Because I think we focus too much on just the 2 names of the players that they're going to be lined up against. And, it's not just a matchup of one guy 6'3" and one guy 6'3". If he plays zone, he's going to pass him off a lot. Maybe that receiver finds the hole in the zone very well, or maybe that quarterback really attacks zone very well. Maybe man to man, they're going to leave him on an island. He's one of the most difficult guys to guard in the league, man to man. Or, I think it really allows you to understand, like, who's a shadow corner. It doesn't necessarily say shadow corner because that's going to be a game-by-game decision on the coach. But if you see a corner like Marshawn Lattimore plays right cornerback 60% of the time, left cornerback 40% of the time, that means he's not going the slot with that receiver. Or if these, Jalen Ramsey stays on one side of the field, okay, they can easily get him away from Jalen Ramsey. Obviously, AJ Boye is awesome, but I'm just trying to give different examples of how the tool works. And, you can really take a deeper dive with this tool on the individual matchups than I think anywhere else in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And so
I just wanted to piggyback off that real quick, because that was the one tool, I'll be honest, out of all the tools that I used last year, the wide receiver cornerback tool was the tool that really helped me down the stretch in the second half in all my leagues, because you spoke before about being realistic about your roster, and everyone thinks that they have a winner, but once you're midway through the season, you should be pretty clear on how your rosters are in all your leagues. And once I figured out that my teams were going to the playoffs, I used that wide receiver cornerback matchup down the stretch. And there was actually one specific week, week 13, Keenan Allen was playing the Steelers, and it just stuck out like a sore thumb using that tool. And he ended up having 40 points in a PPR. And then just using that throughout the playoffs, weeks 14, 15, 16, it was a league winner for me. I won a bunch of my leagues using that tool. So yeah, that's for me, like we spoke about before, it's my favorite tool on the site.
I appreciate those kind of words. That means a lot.
Yeah, definitely an invaluable tool. And, to pair it with all the other stuff you guys have going on is just great. But as you're using that tool and kind of doing your DFS research, how does that like impact your starting lineup from a dynasty perspective? Like if you see a wide receiver cornerback matchup, does that, does one that looks positive weigh more heavily for a non-elite receiver, or how do you treat a matchup that doesn't look so great for, a guy who is a typical plug and play?
It definitely matters a lot more for a guy who's not an elite receiver. Like if I have Mike Evans, I'm not just sitting him because he's got a tough cornerback matchup. Like unless Darrelle Revis comes back, finds a time machine and comes back to 2008 Darrelle Revis, it's not really a major concern of mine. In terms of a Julio Jones, Odell Beckham, those guys are still going to get volume. They probably don't have their ceiling capabilities, but their floors are still great in that volume. It's kind of the number 2 and 3 receivers, and it can be big time tiebreakers for me. And I think that's what you should really use it for. Like, don't start Ted Ginn over Michael Thomas because Ted Ginn's got the way better quarterback matchup.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's what I do. I'm just trying to use extremes. But if, Ted Ginn and you're comparing him to Kenny Stills and trying to figure out which streamer is best, I think that's an excellent way to break it down.
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that was actually stemming from a question that we had from a listener. I kind of incorporated it into mine because it fit in with the tool that I wanted to just make sure that we cover. But kind of leaning from that too, what metrics, if any, that you find are relevant for DFS, whether it's in that wide receiver cornerback tool or it's in the player-to-player comparison? I mean, you guys have an endless amount of data flowing through the site. What metrics, if any, do you find relevant, like for DFS, that you also use for evaluating rookies or even long-term player profiles? Like just off the top of my head, you mentioned Ted Ginn. In the chat last year, we were talking about at the end of this season when we were playing, I think it was probably week 11 or 12. Ted Ginn was out, and we talked about Tre'Quan Smith being
football, and then he was the min price guy, and we all put him in the captain spot, and everyone won all the money at TQE.
Yes, we won all the money that week. And it was like, what did you see in the metric profile? Like, what did you use from a DFS perspective to align those guys up to evaluate him properly? Because at the time, Tre'Quan Smith didn't have, many reps in the bag.
So for that particular week, one of the things I really used was the injury tool. And I could take Ted Ginn off the field and see how all his teammates performed. And Tre'Quan Smith's target share absolutely shot up to a point where he was, he was an obvious play at min price. He was set to get 5 or 6 targets. All of his targets, he basically took over the Ted Ginn role. I could see that because I could see how he performed when Ginn was off the field, not just when Ginn missed games. In terms of how do I evaluate players using all these different metrics, it kind of can depend on the player. Like weekly matchups, I love using the wide receiver cornerback matchups. I love using the injury tool to understand how to adjust to when players are off the field. I love using the head-to-head tool, understanding matchups, understanding how teams perform versus a wide receiver 2 versus a wide receiver 3. Heat maps, I think, are incredibly effective. You can really see where teams are vulnerable. On an offensive perspective, obviously target share, air yards, weighted opportunity. One of the things we're adding this year too is a game script tool. So you can see how teams are, where the ball's going when teams are down by 10 or more points.
Yeah,
so a team like the Raiders, that might be incredibly relevant.
That's huge.
We're going to have a pace tool too to understand how teams perform. Like how often is a team running when they're up by 8 or more points versus how often are they passing? And a team like the Chiefs, that can be very relevant if they're going to win a lot of games by a lot of points. So, quite frankly, I know I'm kind of giving a long-winded answer here, but I think fantasy is so much about opportunity and what you do with it. So if you can recognize opportunity holes, then I think that's a great place to find, guys coming to the year. And I really like to look at, what kind of athletic profile they have, what kind of success they've had in limited opportunity, and can they get more opportunity?
Awesome. Great. Thanks. And I think your point to opportunity, I think that's one thing in my game, at least personally, that I overlook a lot. I'll tend to lean toward a profile and an athletic profile metrically, to kind of break a tie over opportunity, because I think cream always rises to the top personally. But I think that is a weakness. And I think, there's something to be said for that, which actually kind of leads us to a listener question. So we're going to kind of switch gears here. I wanted to make sure I tied in DFS and the metrics that you guys offer, but we do have a ton of listener questions, one specifically talking about opportunities. So I'm going to switch it over to Russ, and he's going to kind of lead the charge from here.
Yeah, so this one's from Alex, and most of these here are going to be dynasty questions. So Alex wants to know if your dynasty team is still 2 to 3 players away from being a contender, should you sell your possible breakout players and stack picks, or try and wait it out and hopefully someone breaks out? And then he lists players like Pettis, James Washington, Hamilton, or Gallup.
Ooh, I'm keeping Gallup at all costs right now. I think that's a guy you rebuild with or you win this year. I think he's going to take a major step forward.
Wow, so no go on Randall Cobb, huh?
I mean, I don't think Randall Cobb's going to have a big role. And if you look at what Gallup did last year, his luck was so bad with the way Prescott constantly missed him down the field that if that regresses to the mean, and I know that's one of the most overused phrases in fantasy football, but even if it just becomes average, because he was open, and Dak Prescott can throw a football. I mean, he's not an elite passer, but he can throw a football. And if that just goes to average, we're talking about a guy that's going to, crush where he's currently going and how he's currently being valued. I mean, that was PFF's #1 over in last year's draft class.
And they could open it up in Dallas too. Like they could throw the ball a lot more than what we're thinking.
Absolutely. I think honestly, Pettis' window to sell was probably a month ago as opposed to now. You're kind of selling low a little bit. Emmanuel Sanders looks really good coming off a Achilles injury, which blows my mind, which hurts Hamilton's ability to break out right now. So instead of looking at it as just like do I make a trade, one of these guys to try to go for it this year, or do I wait? I look at it more as the selling windows on the guys he's mentioning aren't great right now. And I'm not just going to sell for the sake of selling. My approach to this would probably be if you're 2 or 3 players away, that means with the right break, you can compete and injuries happen and everything. So, I would probably see if you could buy low on a couple guys. Maybe someone's really worried about Damian Williams this year, and his value in fantasy goes all over the place. And if I can get him for a second-round pick, which I've seen happen, then that's a guy that all of a sudden you're now 1 player away. And if Gallup breaks out, you can be a playoff contender if Damian Williams goes the right way, and you can sell him a lot higher 3 months from now.
So, well, just to piggyback off Damian Williams, are you a believer in him short-term, long-term? Because Darwin Thompson's getting a lot of hype in camp and from Andy Reid. Is there any shot that Darwin Thompson can take a significant chunk out of carries from Damian Williams?
So I am a believer in Damian Williams, and they gave him they didn't give him a lot of money, but they gave him a new contract in the offseason. I think Carlos Hyde stinks.
I'm with you on that one. Just please tell Nick that, please.
Every single place he's gone, if you look at his yards per carry, if you look at his success rate metrics, they're just so much lower than everybody else's. And I know that he was going to take the job, and then the next day the beat reporters were like, he might not make the team. There's a lot of beat reporters have also said that this is Damian Williams' job. I think ultimately what happens is Williams will take about 70% of the touches, and Darwin Thompson will take about 30%, and I'm not sure Hyde will make the team. Yeah, so I think they're both going to have a lot of volume. But at the end of the day, they're both valuable because they're both attached to the best offense in the NFL. So even 30% of Thompson is very valuable, and he's an injury away from being a league-winning guy.
See, I like Hyde, but that was I agree. It was overblown, the whole taking first team snaps. So I was not on board with that, but I personally, you'll find, Eliot, as we go through the show, I'm very much as you answer questions, I'm sure Russ is going to take a couple shots. I like to go team volume at running back, and I like to gather all the handcuffs, and Hyde is one of my guys because, like you said, he's tied to the Chiefs offense. So, as Darwin is a relative unknown at this point still, I was going with the savvy vet, and I think you're right. I mean, there's a chance that he gets cut and he's not even on that squad. And if that's it, then I've got clarity and I can move on.
Real quick before we move on, Pettis for a 2020 first round pick. Which way are you going?
2020 first round pick.
Yeah, that's not even close.
Okay. Sorry, Alex.
No, okay. With this 2020 draft coming up, I mean, basically, even if it's the last pick, you're getting a guy that has a chance to go in the first round of the actual NFL draft. It's a loaded class.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so next question here by Cody Kutzer. How do you handle dealing with teams that consistently overvalue their assets and undervalue everyone else's? Do you completely ignore them? Just accept you're going to have to overpay if you really want one of their players. So that's interesting.
For the record, overpaying is never the correct answer.
Agreed.
Just buying above value just because you like a player, that's you always want to factor in cost. So that's not the correct answer. I mean, you can just counter his trades every time, or basically ignore him and view it as like an 11-man league. Because when people are hard-headed and they overvalue all their guys, you don't want to let them win. By just getting frustrated and saying, you know what, I really want Curtis Samuel this year, I'm just going to overpay. He's got him. I value him as a late 2020 first rounder. I'm going to give him mid or early. No, that's the wrong approach. You're not going to win long term. So that's one of the reasons people have multiple leagues too. So if they're guys you really want, you can make sure you have exposure to them.
I just said this last week in the episode, and I think every league has at least one of these guys. Unfortunately, in the NFLMAX league, we have like 4 to 5 of these guys. But either way, I totally agree with what you said there. Nick, did you have any comments on that or no?
No, yeah, I think that's, overpaying, like you're saying, is not the answer. Absolutely not. And the cheapest way to get guys is through the draft. So you have to kind of have a stance on some of these guys early. Now is not the time to go buy Curtis Samuel as the drum beat continues to get louder and louder and louder. Same thing with Darwin Thompson. I mean, he's up in a second round valuation now, whereas, right after the rookie draft, I was getting him late third, early fourth. I mean, I have a fair share of Darwin Thompson, but I mean, if someone wants to come buy him now, I'm charging a second. It's a premium now. So, it's just not the time to go, especially in preseason. So many people say that don't overreact to preseason. And then you watch them on Twitter, drooling over, one catch. So just don't overpay. And,
that drives me nuts, man, especially the practice clips. And it's like one video of a rookie and everyone's like, see, I told you I was right.
Yeah, there was actually one video of Ridley out there earlier this offseason running at half speed, and he caught a ball. And they're like, oh, Ridley with the eyes emoji. And I'm like, he literally was jogging, and he's a wide receiver, and he caught the ball.
The DK Metcalf stuff is out of control, whichever way you want to go. But like, he's running against air, and he just runs a go route, and everyone's like, oh, this dude is a problem. And I'm like, you realize that all NFL receivers can run straight and catch a football, right? This isn't like breaking news. Yeah. But the Curtis Samuel thing is, I'll just speak from experience, is that he's my highest owned best ball guy. He's a guy I went out and tried to get this year. And one league where I needed to rebuild, I traded Antonio Brown for Curtis Samuel and 2 2021st.
That's great. I would take that side any day.
And at the time, people were like, it was more of like a 50-50 trade. And if I tried to do that right now, no one would even consider it.
Yeah, no one would even counter.
Yeah.
Right.
So you mentioned Ridley. Here's a question about his brother, Calvin Ridley. We got a couple here from Eric. Okay, so how much do you take positive and negative regression into account? And then he gives examples about Calvin Ridley's ridiculous high touchdown rate, Zeke's low touchdown rate, and Julio Jones's consistent low touchdown rate. So positive and negative regression.
It definitely comes into play. I mean, Calvin Ridley's came into play last year when he caught 6 touchdowns in 2 games.
Yeah.
It kind of just ended.
Yeah, bingo, 100%.
But the thing about Calvin Ridley is that's also kind of who he is. He's a big play down the field kind of guy. That's how they set him up in the offense. He's not going to lead the team in targets. Julio Jones is. Julio's not going for 3,000 yards like he said he might do. But Austin Hooper's there. Mohamed Sanu's still a good player, despite the fact that the fantasy community never wants to give him any credit. And Freeman's going to catch passes too. So really he's going to be that big play, like have down weeks, have major spike weeks. He's probably more of a best ball guy for me, though in Dynasty, obviously he's very valuable because of how young he is and how talented he is and the offense he's in. Zeke, I would say, is definitely in for positive touchdown regression if he actually plays. Running backs tend to kind of get their due more often. With Julio Jones, it's just a situation for whatever reason. I don't think it's Julio. I think it's Matt Ryan. Him can never seem to get on the same page in the red zone. The play that always stands out in my mind is against the Patriots, where he had like 7 red zone targets and no catches, and then he threw it. Ryan threw it right to Malcolm Butler, and Julio went over the top of him and just snatched it out of his hands. Yeah. And they lost by 14 points. It was the last play of the game, and Julio was just like, Matt Ryan, if you actually threw me the football, we'd win this game. teams have really tried to take Julio away, and the Falcons look at other things, and he tends to get his 40-yard, 50, 60-yard touchdowns. But I would say that he's probably a safe bet to get in the 6 to 9 touchdown range again. I don't think we're going to see 15 or 16 touchdown Julio. If we do, he's going to break fantasy football.
Yeah, I agree.
So just a quick question and piggyback. What are you doing, or how are you looking at with regression? Someone like a guy like Tyler Lockett, who was highly efficient last year, and even Mike Williams down in the red zone.
His efficiency will drop. So this is one of the things with regression. I don't like to cast a net across everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Lockett's efficiency will drop because it cannot go up. It is not statistically possible to go up.
Now, are you talking about specifically touchdowns because he had 10 touchdowns, or are you talking about his yards?
I'm talking about he had a perfect wide receiver rating when he was targeted last year. So like it has to come down. But that's also who he is, and that's who Russell Wilson is. He's an elite deep ball thrower, and Tyler Lockett's an elite route runner and incredibly dangerous. I think you can balance out his regression because more volume should come.
Yeah.
Doug Baldwin's not there. It's TK Metcalf's already hurt. We're talking about David Moore, who's kind of got a similar role. He has positive regression coming this year, but I think Lockett's increased volume, counteracts the efficiency decrease. Yeah. Who was the other guy you asked about? I'm sorry.
Mike Williams.
And see, he's a similar player where I think his volume will go up because Tyrell's not there, but Hunter Henry is there, and that could impact some of his red zone stuff for sure. Without Melvin Gordon last year, his red zone target share jumped by 11%, so that's another thing to factor.
Interesting. Yeah.
The thing about Mike Williams, though, is the Chargers really truly believe, because this is what he's done his entire career, is that in contested catch situations he's going to win. And that's what he does. So I think he's still going to have a lot of red zone opportunities. I know that a lot of red zone stats are noise, but certain guys are really used in that area of the field. Devontae Adams is a great example where, we're in the red zone, it's time to throw to Adams. I think the Chargers will have a lot of that. We're in the red zone, we're going to throw to Mike Williams. I just don't know if he's ever going to have the yards to supplement it to be the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 kind of guy that people talk about him. And I love Mike Williams' talent.
And here's the last one from Eric here. Just to preface this, pre-draft, me and Nick talked about the wide receivers, pre-draft and post-draft. But for me, I'll ask you, for me, it was A.J. Brown was my favorite rookie wide receiver for this class. And then just going to Tennessee was just, a huge heartbreak. Who was your number one wide receiver pre and post?
So this is a tough wide receiver class to grade out because I thought Metcalf had the highest upside. I thought Brown had the highest floor. A.J. Brown, that is, not Marquise Brown.
Mm-hmm.
I like Metcalf. The thing is, for me, I really like A.J. Brown. I think he's just a solid player, but Tennessee's not a great landing spot. Andy Isabella is a guy that's going to jump up because he goes from the Cardinals and they're going to run the air raid offense. I talked about earlier talking about how my team is going into a draft. I use this as well. On a team where I felt like I'm a championship competitor, I wanted safer guys. I was willing to take A.J. Brown. On a team that I was complete, in shatters or whatever it is, I was going DK Metcalf because I wanted that ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Marquise Brown, I'm lower on than other people. The size, the offense he's in, the foot injury. So that's. I guess I'm kind of looping around, but those are some of my favorite guys last year.
Yeah, that's pretty much what his question was. It was, how do you balance talent versus situation in Dynasty? And then he says, A.J. Brown going to the Titans, and he lists guys like James Washington and Dallas Goedert getting drafted to their respective teams as well last year. So, yeah, it's a catch-22. You love a guy like A.J. Brown. He goes to Tennessee, and, they're going to run the ball pretty much over there. So it's, it's rough.
But it's also why Dynasty this year, right? Once you were 105 and 110, you weren't getting much value for moving down because people are I feel like I get my guy. There's not much difference in this tier.
Yeah, I feel like Dynasty really wised up this year in rookie drafts. You had the occasional person jumping up, really excited about Kyler Murray and probably overpaying even in one quarterback leagues. But for the most part, people, like you were saying, we're sitting there and we're more willing to get out than get into that zone.
So let's talk about your process in Dynasty and how you approach these rookies every year with the incoming class. Based on your analytics, what are some players that you just can't quit? Like for me, Allen Robinson, I loved him coming out of college. What he did with Blake Bortles, a quarterback, was just phenomenal. And then he just, he fell off. He got hurt. But what are some guys that you can't quit? And the guys that are based on your analytics.
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, one of the guys I cannot quit is, and I might give some lower names here because especially in Dynasty, the top end guys are tough to just kind of be overweight on. One guy I just can't quit is Duke Johnson. And I'm really glad he got traded to the Texans. I think he's an uber talent. He's a great pass catcher. If he's ever used properly, like we saw, he can kind of be a fringe RB1, James White kind of guy. A wide receiver I can't quit is David Moore. For all the reasons we just talked about Tyler Lockett, I think positive regression's coming in, and he's super cheap. John Brown's a guy that I've always really liked, and I think he's in the best situation he's been in for a long time with Josh Allen and that skill set. Robert Foster is the same thing. I know it doesn't really count because it's just this year, but I can't seem to not try to get him on my teams. And then the number one guy, he hasn't really been a disappointment, but OJ Howard I had in my top 6 rookies. He's the guy that I've tried to get on every single league, and he hasn't completely broken out yet, but if I can get OJ Howard in any trade, I'm getting him.
What about guys that you missed or hit on in previous years? Like the community was so high on Kristen Michael for so long, and we all just whiffed on Kristen Michael. The metrics were there. His profile was there. His draft capital was there. I believe he was a 2nd-round draft pick. He went to a juicy situation, backing up Marshawn Lynch in Seattle. He just couldn't put it together. So the community as a whole, we all missed on Kristen Michael. I'm not sure, how you had him ranked coming out of college, but what are some guys like that you just totally missed on? Anybody?
Oh, our Darius Stewart is someone I loved. I used to call him Goat Darius. That one did not go well. John Kelly last year was a guy I was really high on. He completely fell in the draft. I honestly kind of had a similar view on him and David Montgomery, just in terms of that contact balance is something I'm obsessed with. So those are a couple.
What about like Dorial Green Beckham and Corey Coleman? Were you high on those guys coming out?
I was not. I have a rule that I don't draft Baylor receivers in that system. Dorial Green Beckham was a guy that I was enamored with the talent, but he was a head case. A guy that I might say I was right on was Christian McCaffrey. Was my 101, hands down. But I mean, I thought he could develop into the player he is, but obviously there are a lot of people that really liked him in fantasy anyway. I'm trying to think of like an absolute like deep sleeper that I've hit on. Robbie Anderson was a guy that I talked a lot about last year, whose value has completely shot up. I'm just like going through. Kiki Cutie was a guy that I was really high on before, when he was going to the 4th round of drafts. I had him rated higher than like everybody else. It was me and Sigmund Bloom. We actually did a podcast where we just talked about him.
Really?
Tyreek Hill was a guy I told everyone to go get last year, and I mean, like, he was always good, but I said, he's not going to be just a best ball player. He matches up perfectly with Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes was my highest owned quarterback at best ball last year, but that doesn't really count. People got super high on him in a hurry. Arian Foster is probably one of my biggest hits. Yeah. When no one cared about Arian Foster, I was not shutting up about Arian Foster. The thing is, no one's really people have only really cared about what I've had to say for the last 3 years. So those were the guys I was trying to think about that people could actually like go back and check. Otherwise, I could, be like, man, Terrell Davis. No one talked about Terrell Davis, and that was my guy. Like, I don't want to do that. I was trying to think about the last couple of years, and a lot of those guys' stories have yet to be written. So that's why I was struggling.
No, that's a good list.
Actually, one more, just because I have to. Deshaun Watson was my number 1 quarterback in the draft.
I was going to say, how were you not talking about Watson? I was literally going to call you out for that, Elliot.
Yeah, Elliot, I call him the GOAT because Nick was
on
Deshaun Watson.
I was kind of hoping you wouldn't go there.
We have to talk about it because of his arm strength, and he had one of the lower percentile.
No, we're not going there. Otherwise, this podcast is going to go 4 hours of me just yelling about it.
I love Deshaun Watson. He was my favorite quarterback coming out of college that year. So I'm with you all the way. But me and Nick, that whole summer, were back and forth. And because he had such a great showing his rookie year, I call him the greatest of all time. So he's the GOAT.
Yeah. See, I agree with you. You know what? I'm actually thinking about that draft class. Alvin Kamara, I was incredibly high on. I gave a first-round grade to, and I was telling people to go out and get him. I got him in best ball a ton in like the 14th, 15th round that year too. So that was great.
Where were you at on Juju in that class?
I don't want to talk about Juju. That one was less successful.
Okay, that's fair. Just curious.
And honestly, I thought Juju struggled to separate, and he went to Pittsburgh, and I didn't know if they were going to put him in the slot and kind of give him that free release. And once they did, I think he's really taken off since then. Deshaun Watson was the guy that was my number one superflex guy. I didn't understand the fact that people didn't say he had NFL talent, and people were ignoring his rushing upside and his ability to contribute right away. I mean, in the game against the Bengals where he was horrendous, the first national TV start, people said he was basically shouldn't play in the league. I give Evan Silva crap for it all the time.
Good.
Because that guy's not an NFL quarterback.
He put the team on his back and won the national championship pretty much. And the guy ran for 1,000 yards in college in 1 year.
Yeah, and the thing is, and even in that Bengals game, he broke a 50-yard touchdown run and won them the game. So I just, I guess it took me a second to spark my memory. But yeah, Watson and Kamara are definitely some of my bigger hits.
That's awesome because I was not high on Kamara coming out of college, Tennessee. Moving on here, a couple more questions and we'll let you go. Okay, here's my boy, Josh Gordon. He's got John Baleo. He wants to know, does Josh Gordon affect N'Keal Harry's value in Dynasty, or is it Jacoby Myers?
Oh, you're not taking Jacoby Myers over Harry.
Or even Josh Gordon.
Yes. Yes, don't. If Myers is somehow still available, go grab him because he might end up running more with the first team at the start of the season than Harry because Harry's kind of struggled with injuries, struggled with drops, and Myers has played better. But Harry's the first-round pick. He's going to get involved in the offense. I think Gordon does knock down Harry a little bit because Harry's profile is amazing, but one of the big things is about the opportunity. He's not going to have any competition on the outside. It's just going to be Edelman and James White and him. And Gordon is going to take that role. We're talking about Harry is now at, I would say, best case, fourth in line for targets behind Edelman, Gordon, and James White, who's really a receiver. I mean, they're talking about 20% target share. So I think it definitely does impact him. And, the thing is with Josh Gordon is we don't even know he's actually going to play week one because he could, relapse. And I'm not trying to make light of his situation. He has a real addiction problem, and that's a scary thing, and you never know. Honestly, with Josh Gordon and Dynasty, every time people get really excited about him, and I can sell him for high value. That's what I try to do.
That would be me. I would be the buyer, and you would be the seller. I just talk about guys you can't quit. I just can't quit the Josh Gordon roller coaster. Every year I punch my ticket. I talk about it almost every week. What a wonderful ride it is because when he plays – even last year in his short showing with New England, he looked great. So
there's no questioning the talent. I mean, when that guy was on the Browns, he was up there with Julio Jones in terms of God made me to play football and be better than you. That's how he was.
I mean, he's beating out Philip Dorsett, right, for the outside role. Right?
Harry or Gordon?
Gordon.
We'll see. I mean, Dorsett's pretty fast, Dorsett runs a straight line fast, and so that makes him a good prospect. I'm obviously being sarcastic in case that's not coming across.
It was not. You actually had me scared there for a second.
No. I know people lose their minds sometimes when guys run fast 40s, and Dorsett's still a deep threat, but he's probably the wide receiver 5 or 6 on this team.
Okay, good. A couple more here. We got one from Charles. What's your take on drafting on opportunity versus drafting value? Is any player undraftable? And he gives examples like Giovanni Bernard, not viable to take over full-time versus Peyton Barber, who is taking full-time.
No one's undraftable. Everything is cost related. Like Eric Ebron's a guy that I would absolutely be selling right now, but if he was free, I would want him on my team. And Bernard's going to have the pass catching role, but he's an injury away, which we know happens all the time from starters' work. So I don't think that's the right mindset. I mean, I would prefer Barber over Bernard at this point. because Bernard's never going to be a long-term starter, and neither is Barber. And Barber's got the easier path to touches, in better offense. But no, Bernard, I still think is a fine end of the roster kind of guy, because you can stream him and he can get you 6 or 7 points and not kill you. And if something happens to Bernard, we've seen it. Bernard, if something happens to Mixon, we've seen it the last 2 years. I mean, Bernard can put up 15 to 20 points.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, we got time for probably 2 more, and then I'm going to put you on the hot seat. So this one comes from, again, from John Bello. We know you're a Jets fan, a big Jets fan. So podcasts are talking about Sam Darnold's rise in Dynasty with his preseason showings. You on the same page, or is it being overblown?
I do think it's funny that he should have thrown an interception that got dropped on his first drive in the preseason, and how narrative would be completely different. I tend to not be a buyer in preseason. That being said, Sam Darnold does look like, from even a pocket presence standpoint, where he's kind of gotten out of the pocket in that one play in the red zone and made that nice throw, that he's going to, be improved this year. He looked a lot better the second half of the year than the first half of the year. One of the biggest reasons I'm buying Sam Darnold is that defense is poop. I don't know if I can curse on here, so that's just what I'm going with.
Go for it.
If you look at that cornerback roster, and keep in mind, Tremaine Johnson was, you could call him burnt toast last year. I mean, he was always getting beat. Is their best corner and has a hamstring injury. After that, it's Brian Poole and Darryl Roberts and a bunch of people you've never heard of. They also, their best pass rusher is a 3rd-round pick this year on the outside. They have no edge rushers and they have no cornerbacks. They're going to give up a lot of points, which is going to be a lot of positive situations for Sam Darnold. With Robbie Anderson and Jamison Crowder and Chris Herndon after 4 games. I get the buy, but I'm not going crazy because of the film. I like the situation more. The one big concern is Adam Gase has not been fantasy friendly outside of Peyton Manning to quarterbacks.
Yeah, can we talk about Adam Gase for just 1 second here? Because last year with the Dolphins, me and Nick were pounding the table for Kalen Ballage, and Gase would not let Ballage play up until the Minnesota game when he busted out. I think, what do you have, 12 to 15 carries, 150 yards or something like that. And the Ballage barrage began. And I can't help but wonder what it would have looked like last year if Gase would have just give him a shot and let Ballage get more carries. I think Gase was incredibly overrated as a head coach going into last year.
It's an embarrassment to the NFL that Adam Gase is a head coach. So I'll go a step further than you. If you look outside of 1-score games, which he's 20-6 in, those are destined to regress. Even good coaches go about 500 in those situations. He was like the worst NFL coach ever from a point differential and win-loss record standpoint. Yeah. His offenses have always been incredibly slow. His players tend to hate him. He's kind of a psychopath. He looks like he does cocaine before press conference. There's like a lot of things, and that last one's a joke. But there's a lot like this whole let's give him a shot with a real quarterback. Like Jay Cutler and Ryan Tannehill aren't let's lose every game by 30 points bet. And yes, his offense was great with Peyton Manning. I could have coached Peyton Manning and had a great offense. You know what I mean? It was not broken neck Peyton Manning. It was, no matter who's my receivers, it could be Brandon Stokely or Austin Collie. I mean, obviously Eric Decker and Demaryius Thomas were elite talents. They just scored a ton of points. It's not hard to do that. So I think Adam Gase that was a huge mistake of a hire.
Yeah, I totally agree.
All right. And last listener question before we put you on the hot seat. This one's from Richard DeMauro. And we've had big debates here. Big debates. Actually, not even a debate. We're in full agreement. Mitch Trubisky, are you a believer or not?
As a fantasy player, yes. As an NFL quarterback, I'm getting a little nervous.
Okay. What about him and his game makes you nervous?
His ability to go through progressions and his inaccurate throws.
Yeah. I mean, he can't even hit a barn. He can't hit the broadside of a barn. It's brutal sometimes watching him try to throw the football.
But he has legit rushing upside.
Yes, he does.
And he's going to be the quarterback there for 3 more years.
Yeah, and that was kind of our next question. Do you expect him to run as much?
Yeah, because, I mean, they're going to have to move the ball. And also the defense isn't going to be able to play as well this year as it was last year. It goes back to a regression thing. Turnovers are a random thing, statistically speaking. and the Bears forced like an ungodly amount of turnovers. They're going to be a great defense still, but I think there's going to be some more positive game script for Trubisky, and he's very comfortable running if his first or second read's not open.
Yeah. And then, so this last question that's going to stem from it. What's your opinion on drafting quarterbacks in like the first 2 rounds of a dynasty rookie draft? If it's, let's say, one quarterback, not super flex. I know that's kind of getting dated now. Super flex is kind of turning into the base format, but it's one quarterback.
One quarterback leagues, I kind of forget that quarterbacks exist. I mean, we're talking about it's 22 deep right now for just the season. Like Jimmy Garoppolo's quarterback like 22 right now. You can stream 2 guys and be fine.
Yep.
Like obviously, if you could have gotten Patrick Mahomes, he would have been worth a pick in the first 2 rounds. But in general, I tend to ignore those guys.
Great. And now we're going to move to the hot seat. 1-word answers, just real quick. Daily draft pod, potential for a return, or is it a goner?
Yes. Well, if I can elaborate, my plan is to do it this year. I picked a good class to miss out on last year, but 2020, I feel like I have to do it, and I should be in a position in this startup where I have the time to do it.
Okay, yeah. Going a little further, you have to do it 2020.
I thought I'd be allowed to expand on that one.
Lev Bell, over under 14 games.
Over.
Okay, so you think he's staying healthy?
I'm not confident in that because I'm not a doctor.
Jamison Crowder, over under 70 receptions.
I'm going to go under.
Okay, because he's been getting a little bit of a drumbeat lately.
Yeah, no, he has, and I think it makes a lot of sense. But his injury history, and I think that Robbie Anderson will still be the top target, and Anunwa and Herndon are there. I think that that number seems about right, but I'll go 65.
Yeah, I'm with you, by the way, because even the Jets offense in general just didn't have the volume the past couple of years, but I know it's new coach Adam Gase, but even Robbie Anderson, who I'm a huge fan of as well, I mean, just doesn't have the volume to support, another 70 reception receiver, but I think it's going to be close, like you said. Next one player to draft in every league. Redraft and dynasty.
It was Curtis Samuel. Tony Pollard, again, it kind of was Tony Pollard. These guys all are shooting up draft boards. You know what? I'll go Chase Edmonds and Darren Waller.
I mean, Robert Davis.
Robert Davis.
Robert.
Barry Sanders or Emmitt Smith?
Oh, Barry.
Yeah, I think that one's he put that one on there. I was like, who's going to pick? I'm a huge Cowboy fan. I'm not picking Emmitt Smith over Barry.
Yeah, but when I was a kid, that was the debate, Emmitt versus Barry.
All right, and 2 fun ones. Moon landing, was it real or fake?
Real.
And flat Earth, or is it round?
Round.
All right, and just to kind of take us out here, and again, Eliot, we really appreciate you coming on the show, giving us your time. We know you're a busy guy, and we really appreciate you giving us an opportunity to get you on here. Give us one hot take for the season. What do you got?
Let him think about it, because give him a couple seconds here, because I want one from you too, Nick.
I've got mine ready to go.
Got yours? All right, so we'll save the best for last. We'll save Eliot's for last. Everybody loves a hot take, so we want Eliot's hot take on the season. My hot take is Lamar Jackson is going to finish the 2019 season as the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football. And he's going to break the record of most rushing touchdowns in a season, which I believe Cam Newton holds for 14, I believe, or 12. But yes, Lamar Jackson, the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football.
All right. I've got a couple. How many do you want?
Just give me one.
All right. Number 1, top 1, Nick Chubb, without a doubt, finishes in the top 5 of running backs this year. No one's there to compete with him. He's a decent enough receiver. That's way overblown, by the way, from his time in Georgia. He caught passes his freshman year, and then it's just part of their DNA. They go away from it, and they have defined roles. Nick Chubb finishing RB5 or better this year, and David Johnson not finishing in the top 10 of running backs. He's out.
All right, Eliot, what do you got?
I really hope you're right about Lamar Jackson, because that would mean a lot of money in my pocket. So go that. prediction. I'll say Curtis Samuel has a 2017 like Tyreek Hill season and has the opportunity to finish as a top 10 overall wide receiver.
That's blazing. Love it.
Wow.
Well, that'll be it for the show for tonight. Want to thank again, Eliot. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You can find him at the Quant Edge, thequantedge.com. And Eliot, what's your Twitter handle?
You can follow me on Twitter at Eliot Crist, 1L, 1T, no H in Chris. I apologize. My parents made it difficult, but I don't really have a choice.
Awesome. Check them out. Check out the site. And for the hot pineapples, this is the Ewok Juggernaut. Everybody one clap. Thanks, guys.
In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
That was fun, guys. Yeah, honestly, I don't know why I blanked on some of the guys I thought of because honestly, just like draft season and all that stuff.
Elliot, you got like a 50 million things going through your mind.
Yeah.
I totally understand.
Right now, what's going on? One of the things going on in my mind is who's going to get the second half snaps for the 49ers, and can we come back?
I know. I figured you were watching the game.
How bad does Drew Lock look tonight?
Honestly, I haven't really been able to watch the game because it was messing with the stream, so I didn't want to do that. So I had it on my phone, but I was more focused on you guys. But people are asking questions in the chat. There's a lot of stuff going on at the moment, so I apologize. I was a little distracted there, but
you were fine.
Yeah, and we really do appreciate you coming on, Elliot. And obviously, I said it on the air, but I love TQE, and I'll be subbing for probably forever as long as you hold the site. So
I
really
appreciate
you coming
I'm
on.
going away anytime soon, so that means a lot. It's worked really hard on it. And for you guys to say all that nice stuff, honestly, it means way more than you know, because there have been so many hours put in on these things to try to make them usable for people and different, and honestly easy to understand too.
Yeah, it really is easy. It's awesome.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
Elliot.
All
Thanks.
right, I'll talk to you soon.
I'll have this up probably tomorrow.
Awesome. Just tag me and I'll make sure to tweet it out and all that stuff.
We'll do.
All right,
Okay.
Elliot. Thanks again. Take care.
See ya. What a great guy, man.
Yeah, told you he's a super nice guy. I mean, even to just give his time to that many podcasts is just fantastic.
What did he say he did? How many in 2 days? 30?
17 in 2 days.
That's just incredible.
Yep.
I see you fixed your gnomes over there on the window.
Oh yeah, I had them fixed before we ever started recording.
Either that or they just woke up. They're like, oh, yeah, we got a podcast here.
I should do that, like leave them down and then like they...
Just out of nowhere. Like, oh, they're up.
What was my hot take? David Johnson outside the top 12 and Nick Chubb inside the top 5.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And no Kareem Hunt.
Yep. And I can tack on Dalvin Cook is going to be my bust 100%. I hate Dalvin Cook.
Alexander Madison is going to make his way.
Watch.
I want to know, my question for you is how many starts does Alexander Madison get in 2019?
6.
Really? That many?
Yes, because Dalvin's going to be hurt for that many.
I mean, I would assume the under-over has got to be like 2 or 3. So you're taking the over on that.
I mean, Dalvin Cook has played not even 16 games in 2 years. So he's missed an average of 8 or 9 games a year.
Yeah. Did you say last week he never had 1,000 yards combined?
Combined, he doesn't have 1,000 yards for his career.
Wow. That's a hot stat right there.
Yeah. And he's being drafted over Nick Chubb, who just had 4 yards shy of 1,000 in 12 games.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That I don't get at all.
And there's no pass catching. Everyone's knocking Chubb's pass catching like he can't do it. He did it his freshman year at Georgia, and then he didn't have to do it because that's how Georgia runs.
It's true.
It's wild, man. Wild.
Crazy cats.
Crazy cats.
Like, I don't want to like
just so I have him.
You know, I don't want to like him. I actually want to hate him because he cost me a championship. But
you actually like him.
But I like him. But he goes against everything that I believe in. Like, he's sub 200. He's undrafted. He's got no draft pedigree. And there's Royce Fraudman, loss of 5 yards. Yeah, that's going to continue in 2019.
Luckily, I don't have much Royce Freeman.
One clap.